Welcome to Nomad, Volume 1, Episode 1, Andrew and Peter. In this series, I'll be teaching you about the life of the apostles and a little bit about their background. We are also going to touch on what we can learn from them in our time today. So what all do you know about the apostles? Do you even know who they are? Take a moment and write down the names of the 12 apostles without looking. I'll even give you 2 bonus points if you can name the technical 13th apostle and the one that came after Jesus' death and resurrection. Go ahead, I'll wait. Press pause and continue the clip when finished. So did you figure them all out? Well, let's go through them. 1. Andrew. 2. Simon Peter. 3. Philip. 4. Bartholomew, which is also known as Nathaniel. 5. James, the son of Zebedee. 6. John. 7. Thomas. 8. Matthew. 9. James, the son of Alphaeus. 10. Thaddeus. 11. Simon. And 12. Judas Iscariot. Now, do you know who those 2 for extra credit were? The one who replaced Judas when he betrayed Jesus was Matthias. And we can consider Paul as an honorary apostle because he saw Jesus resurrected. I bet some of you probably wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to start out your list, right? Common misconception, but not all of them were followers of Jesus. Some of them were followers of the apostles themselves. So, Jesus was 30 years old when he began his ministry. So anyone following after him calling him rabbi would have been younger. Jewish tradition was that students finished their education around 12 or 13 years old and would follow a rabbi after that, and usually before the age of 20. If you were one that didn't make that cut, you would follow in your family's tradition of work. Fisherman. The apostles could have been anywhere between the ages of 13 and 29 when they began to follow after Christ. Another reason we can place the ages of the apostles being younger is that in Matthew 17:24-27, Jesus and Peter pay the temple tax, and only men 20 years and older paid that tax according to Exodus 30:13-14. It doesn't mention the rest of the apostles paying that tax. And you want to know how he paid that tax? Jesus told Peter to go fishing, and he would find the money in the fish's mouths. Jesus kept them tied to their roots. So today's episode will concentrate on 2 brothers, Andrew and Simon Peter, who now I'm just going to refer to as Peter. Andrew was actually a disciple of John the Baptist, which is supported by John chapter 1. John was standing around one day with 2 of his disciples, one being Andrew, and here comes Jesus walking up, and John just shouts out, "Behold, the Lamb of God!" So John's 2 disciples ditch him and start following after Jesus. I mean, wouldn't you? Andrew was the first called disciple of Jesus. They hang out with Jesus all day, and it's then that Andrew goes back and tells his brother, "We found the Messiah." He brought him to Jesus, and that's where Peter's story began, and his name was changed. It used to be Cephas, Kepha in Aramaic, Petros in Greek, which when you translate all of that to English, it means the rock. We learned from Andrew the importance of bringing people to Christ. He went to his brother and brought him to Christ. He was the one that brought the lunch boy to Jesus with the 2 fish and 5 loaves that fed 5,000 people in John 6:8-13. Him and Philip brought some Greeks to Jesus because they wanted to meet him in John 12:20-22. You may not have heard much about Andrew, but if not for Andrew, would you have heard about Peter or even Christ? He played a major role in the spread of the gospel because he brought key people that Christ wanted to use. So right now, what I want you to do is write down 3 people who you could bring to Christ and how you could see them being a force for the gospel. Then pray for each person and find opportunities to bring them to Jesus. So more people know about Peter than they do Andrew. Peter, he is the rock, the water walker, the ear cutter offer, the denier. Like a whole denomination is built on his apostleship. Catholicism, the office of the Pope is passed down from Peter being the head of the church. Whereas Andrew was a fisher of individuals, Peter was a fisher of men en masse. He was the one that spoke on the day of Pentecost that led many to believe. We already know he was older than the other apostles, and the fact that Jesus healed his mother-in-law in 3/4 of the Synoptic Gospels tells us that he was married. Jesus stayed at Peter's home in Capernaum when he was there, and he used Peter's boat when he spoke to the crowd in Luke 5:3. Peter gets sometimes a little bit of a bad rep for denying Jesus in the courtyard, but he was there in the courtyard when Jesus was being tortured. But where were the other apostles? They all ran away out of fear. Peter, he wasn't perfect by any means. Sometimes we put pastors on pedestals and expect perfection from them, but I'm not really sure where that came from. Peter walked on water, but then he fell. He tried to save Jesus from being arrested and cut off a man's ear, and Jesus just, put it right back on. He got sassy with Jesus when Jesus told him to cast his net again. "Well, we haven't got any fish all day, but sure, whatever you say." And Jesus made the nets overflow. Peter teaches us that Jesus still chooses us to carry out his mission, even when we mess up. We just have to cling to Jesus and be close to him. In all of those times that Peter messed up, he was still close to Jesus. Even Peter's denial did not weaken the love that Jesus had for him. Peter was later redeemed by Christ when he gave him the commission to feed his sheep. He became the head of the church and the apostolic team in Jerusalem for many years before he set out to Rome when Christians began to be persecuted. He was in and out of lockdown wherever he went because of the gospel. The end of the brother's story was tragic, yet it was a torch for the gospel to be carried far and wide. Tradition states that Andrew became a missionary to Eastern Europe and Russia. His death was crucifixion on an X-shaped cross, which later became known for him, St. Andrew's Cross. And Peter was crucified on the cross upside down. Both of these martyrs of the faith requested this because neither felt worthy enough to die in the same way that Jesus did. Andrew continually proclaimed Christ's resurrection while on the cross and led others to believe because of it. So think about this. If it was all a lie, would you go through all the trials and horrific deaths that these brothers faced? I know that I wouldn't. They were there and they saw Jesus' death and resurrection, and nothing, not even death itself, would stop them from proclaiming it. So this wraps up the first episode of Apostles. If you have any questions, shout it out to our team or comment below. Join us for episode 2 next time. Philip and Bartholomew. This is Nomad, signing off.